I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 9, Episode 2 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, slated to come out on April 27th, 2026. And we're going to get right into it. We are looking at a brew that I did over the break. Well, I started it before the break, but I did it this last year. It was a brew for a friend who wanted to learn how to brew. So it is called Vanilla and Spice, or Vanilla Spice. And it is basically a wildflower mead that is just a wildflower base, plain wildflower mead with vanilla bean, a little bit of like cardamom and other spices in it that should enhance that vanilla flavor. So it's a little bit more of like a kind of sweet vanilla push towards it.
Okay.
And it is, let's see, it was bottled on December 20th of 2025, so it's about 4 months old in the bottle, about 7 months old like total, because it takes about 3 months for me to go through my process. So yeah.
Okay, there you go. I really like it, and I want to say that it tastes like what people who have not had mead think mead tastes like.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get lost on mead because they expect it to be sweeter because it's made out of honey. And they expect it to have this really strong, like, honey flavor to it. But, as a fermentable sugar, once you ferment it out, you lose most of those notes. You get a little bit of sweetness, you get a little bit of honey because it's not 100% fermentable. But this really hits well that even, like, the vanilla and the spices are not super strong. Mm-hmm. And it just ends up tasting like a piece of honey candy often tastes like.
Yeah, kind of like if you imagine what one of those like candy corns kind of tastes like. It's not because that's a honey candy, right?
Yeah.
Like if you had like a vanilla version of that. Mm-hmm. Even though they do have vanilla, they're not like really strong vanilla.
Yeah, if you ate like only that little white part, that's the vanilla flavor of it. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. Sorry, I hit the mic. But
you know what? I'm going to push back because you are 100% right in concept, and I can hear that and I can feel that tasting it. To the listeners at home who can't, this is so much better than like a candy corn. I feel like
absolutely.
Candy corn's a cheap candy. We're really downplaying that. This is very smooth. It's sweet, but it's not super sweet. It's got these vanilla and like warm spices to it, but none of them are like really overpowering. So like, I do think this is someone who's never had mead before, and they'd be like, yeah, this is just honey and water.
Right.
Because it keeps a lot of the like more savory aspects to honey. As a wildflower, it does taste a little bit floral. Like it really does let the honey shine in it in ways that a lot of other mead recipes won't, because they're putting in stronger flavors. Like you could make this same thing with like orange blossom honey, and I bet you could pull off something that tastes a lot like a weak creamsicle. Yeah.
I thought that too after I tried this, like taking the same thing and putting an orange blossom honey with a little bit of like orange zest into it, and maybe a touch of like lactose.
Yeah, I was going to say a little lactose for creaminess.
It's got some lactose in it already, but like bringing that back up just a little bit to add that, because that's where you get some of that mouthfeel from.
Yeah, it is a very smooth, like thick mouthfeel.
Yeah, I like this a whole lot. I feel like this is deceptively good for a person's first time brewing something.
Yes.
Not my first time, but me guiding somebody in how to brew it, and they did like most of the work and everything. We did it at my house though, so of course I'm going to keep them from making mistakes and stuff like that. But man, this one turned out really good for being, essentially in the bottle 4 months. It is, so I cannot wait to see what it's like in like 6 or 7 more months.
100%. And I might need to get this recipe for mead, because it also hits another thing that I think this is where mead struggles a little bit sometimes, is because it can have such strong off flavors from just honey being harder to ferment, it needing a lot more time to age. You see a lot of meads that get aged for a very long time, and they're generally either going like all in on the honey, so they like back sweetened with a ton of honey, or they're putting some fairly significant flavorings in.
Yeah.
You know, like think about the average thing that we kind of make together. It's like it's a honey base, but we're putting in like fruit juices or a lot of spices or like a lot of oak or like something like that, because that helps. Like I don't want to say mask, but it helps complement the kind of like a harsher tone that a mead can have.
Yeah, it brings out the complementary flavors that we want
Yeah.
from whatever we're doing, or injects those flavors into the mead. But like the Queen Anne's lace that I make, which is, and even the um, uh, Queen Elizabeth's Rose, those two meads, which I've got a bottle down, and I plan on doing one of the Queen Elizabeth's Rose, the last one. While they're like plain meads, the rose has hibiscus and some other spices in it. The difference between the two is night and day. The Queen Anne's lace is just so delicate and floral and beautiful, and I need to make it again because it's all gone. Because it's just a really good white wine, and it's better than a Chardonnay in my mind because that takes out all that like kind of acidic, heartburn giving, kind of stuff, while keeping those kind of floral nice notes that you get from like a Chardonnay or something. Well, Chardonnay is more like buttery, but you know what I mean. Like you get those like nice notes that are like very delicate. I feel like if you make like a really good mead that's very well, the nutrients are right for your yeast, and you pick a good yeast that goes well with the style you're trying to make, it turns out so well.
It does sound amazing, and I realize I'm taking a very long road to the point I was trying to make. You're 100% right in everything you said. It is a very delicate mead. It's very finely crafted in that sort of sense that, like, it's hard to get a balance this light.
Right.
But also on a flavor profile, this pleasant but this neutral. Whereas, like, a lot of things that we brew, there's a time and a place for it.
Right.
You know, like how many times we talk about, and this is what I would pair it with because it works well with these particular things. This is the closest I've seen to like a self-made like table wine for like out of a mead, where it's like you could have a bunch of bottles of this in your fridge and you could drink it pretty much whenever. It would be good for just like sipping out on a porch. It'd be good with food. It'd be good to, in that movie scenario I was putting before, like you pour yourself a little glass of this with your popcorn, because it's just such the platonic ideal, I think, of what people think of when they think of mead, that often really doesn't match reality. But like, this is what people think of. Like, I think you could get someone to drink this the same way they would have like their nightly glass of white wine.
Yeah. I could see that. I think as opposed to the last cider that we did, that Ludicrous thing, where we talked about how like it's kind of one note and everything like that. The difference between this and that, where that one could just be something like you had said, you could just pull it out and just drink it, and it kind of just be a thing. This one is more like you're pulling it out and drinking it with intention, because it develops over time. It develops in your mouth. It really like has like complex flavors. This is something that you can both sit down and ponder, and that you can go through and just drink, because it's very accessible.
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of this.
It's a good one.
I like it a whole lot. I don't think it would be for everybody though. I think there are some people that would not like it because it's fairly dry. It's off dry. It's got it has the well, I mean, I know because it's below
No,
it's
you're
like
right.
1.012 or something like that for the final ABV, and it just has a little bit of allulose in it to bring out some of that stuff. So it's just a little bit above that, but it's below 1.02.
Yeah, like it's not a dessert wine, but I would be hesitant to say that someone who likes a sweet wine would not like this, because I think with the allulose and just the natural like level of intensity that a honey sweetness is, it tastes pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Like as someone who likes a sweet wine, I would never turn this one away. In fact, when I tasted it, and the allulose is probably what's getting it there. I was like, well, this is normally sweeter than Joe likes.
Yeah.
Because I know you're with your diabetes, the allulose helps bring sweetness in a way that's not going to impact you. So you can drink things that are a little bit sweeter and not have to worry about your blood sugar.
But I really don't like sweet stuff, but I like this one. I like this one a whole lot. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think helps it ride that line for me. And if I'm going to read into the psychology of you, it's sweeter than what you normally make. Not massively more, But I think what lets you be so comfortable with it being a little bit sweeter is it's got like the non-nutritive sweeteners in it, so it's not going to impact you as much. Because when I first tasted it, I'm going to say, I was like, oh man, this is good. I'm used to tasting your things that are good because of their flavor profile and being like, and even though I prefer something sweeter, I really like this. Whereas this is like, and this is like an ideal amount of sweetness for me.
I made it sweeter because that's what the person wanted.
Oh, gotcha.
Not because of me.
That's
and
true.
we included the allulose so that we didn't have to put any extra chemicals in it.
Yeah,
to
no,
stop it
yeah.
from fermenting.
You have to kill the yeast or anything.
So
Gotcha.
this was just a way of like back sweetening it a little bit to the level that they liked without having to kill
There
that
you
stuff.
go. Yeah.
And like we were very careful with how much we put in just to like bring it up to that. So.
Yeah, which you did a great job because it's really easy to overdo allulose and a lot of those sweeteners.
Yeah.
And then especially because they have their own like slightly chemical taste to them.
Yep.
It is really easy to unbalance it. So like the fact that you've thrown in something that people can consider harsh into a drink this delicate is very impressive.
Yeah, it just it's a fine balance of just like working it very slowly as you go along, and then figuring out what the ratio is. Basically, the way I did that was in a glass. I like kind of figured out with this is how many ounces I have, and this is how many.
Yeah. Just do
how
the
much
math.
of a teaspoon, and then I just kind of, and it was more of like a guesstimative math, but I got it pretty close. And then I was like, I need to put this much in, and I put a little bit less in, and then I would add just a tiny bit more until it got to the point that I liked it. And allulose I found, because it has almost like a licorice-like flavor, works really well with baking spices, and that's the spices that we put in here, like cardamom, cinnamon, allspice. There's no pepper in here or anything like that. So, anyways, let's So I'll include the recipe. I'll give it to you, but I'll also probably put the recipe in the notes if someone wants to try to make it, and if I can remember all those steps that I made. But you have to do this, like you have to do it to your taste, not to mine. So I'm not going to tell you how much to back sweeten it to or anything like that. You just do it the way you want to. Let's talk about something that we hinted at in the last episode. We were talking about AI and its effects on things. And one of the things that we had talked about was how it was affecting like junior engineers and stuff like that. And then we got into this thing of, well, is the return on investment good for it? So are taking up all the RAM. So let's just kind of talk about those two things at the same time. But basically, the setup here, and I think everybody knows, like you can't get RAM that was like $200 7, 8, 9 months ago is now $700-800. DDR3 has gone up in price for the first time, and and for anybody that knows a little bit about building computers, DDR3 is like the standard that we used 12 or so generations ago in computing. For RAM. DDR4 is still used heavily today because DDR5 is so expensive. Before, we got up there, so RAM just like shot up because. And storage did too, because manufacturing has gone all in on making RAM and storage for data centers, and generally because of AI promises to buy that stuff, and not the AI promising that, but the CEOs like Sam Altman promising to buy those things and not necessarily following through with those things.
So I think you've hit on all the most important major points on that. Is that it is a very much kind of a loose promise of we intend to buy 60% of your stock of this sort of thing. The other thing to call out for people who are maybe not as hardware savvy, it is different RAM and different storage than what's used in consumer grade products. So it's not an easily absorbed excess. So if AI comes in and says, hey, we said we were going to buy 60%, but actually, did you know Google just developed this new technology that's going to let us cut our RAM usage into like a quarter? So we're actually only going to buy 15%.
Right.
Well, they can't turn around and then immediately sell that to the consumer market because they've now changed their manufacturing processes to generate more of this kind of unique, at least for data centers. So, other data centers could buy for not AI things, but it's not the same sort of stuff you would normally put in your computer.
Right.
I think, and so the RAMs are generally compatible. You could do it, but they're expensive because they've got a lot of extra stuff in them that the average home computer doesn't need.
Yeah, so it's generally ECC,
Mm-hmm.
which DDR5 already has like an error correcting technology within it. So like any DDR5 that you get has a type of error correcting technology, but the data center versions of things like that generally go, while they're the same form factor
Mm-hmm.
and everything, and you can physically put them in the same thing, they generally have extra modules on them that enhance those ECC capabilities.
Exactly.
That's generally what we're talking about.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So it's that little space here where we're not really developing what the consumers want, which is leading to less availability on the consumer side. We're not guaranteed a sale from AI, which I think is more than ever. That's why I think it actually has taken a little bit of a dip recently, as now manufacturers are a little concerned because, they were going to sell all this, AI RAM, and now they potentially maybe aren't because just the demand for it's going to go down, and that's scary for them. But then also, I'll say we've seen these trends before in other PC technologies like graphics cards, when like Bitcoin mining was really becoming a big thing. And let me tell you, when Bitcoin mining became less profitable, those prices did not meaningfully go down. They did go down a little bit, but not meaningfully.
Yeah, really, where we
And
saw like the prices go down was in the used market, because a card that you would still pay $1,000
yes,
for on the used market suddenly became like $500 or $400.
yeah, and that was in part because of how hard those cards are worked, and you knew they wouldn't last as long, and some things like that. And
Well, also because like no one just like
no
if
one
you're
would
already
buy
gonna
the
if
new.
you're gonna
Yeah,
have to pay $1,000 for a two generation old card, and you're getting a brand new card that's got the same or better performance for $1,200, why would you not spend the extra $200?
exactly. Yeah, there's some changes in the market like that. But I guess what I'm looking at right now in my concern for RAM and how it affects the consumer market, I don't think RAM's meaningfully going back down ever.
No, I don't either.
I think it's been elevated. They are still able to sell it at an elevated price because people who can afford it are buying it, and if people who can afford it are buying it, I mean the difference in profit margin on a $300 piece of RAM versus that same $300 piece of RAM now being sold for $800 is way too much of a difference to make up for.
Yeah,
No, it's shitty, but no business is going to say, "Hey, I could sell it for 800, but I'd sell more of it if I sold it at 300." The ratio of how many more people will buy it just isn't there, and that's the unfortunate part. It's just now where RAM was kind of like the cheap part of your build, it's probably not the cheap part of your build anymore, and it probably never will be again, and that really sucks.
yeah. And I mean, you're going to have very expensive graphics cards. You're going to have very expensive RAM.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're going to have like good computing processes or places that can either get discounts on the RAM that they put into their computers, like
Mm-hmm.
Apple. Right now, the best way to get a brand new computer is to get one of Apple's computers, like the MacBook Neo.
Yeah.
Is like one of the best deals in computing for a brand new computer, period, because you get decent performance and a decent amount of RAM on a operating system that's optimized for that.
Yeah, which I mean is crazy considering, and we probably said it here in the podcast before. You go back just a couple of years, and Apple's whole thing was really more ease of use. You were always paying such a massive premium compared to the hardware you were getting.
Yeah,
And now that's reversed just because Apple has the buying power to say, well, no, because I'm buying 30% of your stock or whatever from whatever company they've got doing it. Which, knowing them, they've actually probably got some closer to proprietary people who are just building just for them.
that's kind of the situation. Like they've got
Mm-hmm.
their own assembly lines and their
Yeah.
own processes, and while they're buying RAM from outside manufacturers, they've already secured deals
Yeah.
that have like so much of that RAM coming to them, or they
Mm-hmm.
already have it stockpiled that this is not really affecting them.
Yeah.
I think the other side of this, from like storage, whether you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about SSDs or NVMe drives or anything like that, from any of those sorts of things, all those things are going up, but we're not getting a return on investment for the amount of cost that we're putting into this and the amount of sacrifice we're having to make
Yeah.
right now. I mean, like, I can't say, hey, whatever assistant is, go and do this thing, and it makes that happen.
Yeah.
Or write me this thing and it makes it happen and it's good. Like I can actually use it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it the other thing is most of this is built off an unethical process. We like I do not have as much of a problem with people calling like things piracy and stuff like that and like doing that sort of stuff
Mm-hmm.
because of this exact thing right here. The people that created these things, Meta, OpenAI, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
they trained all this on stolen data. They trained it on my stolen data. They trained it on your stolen data. Companies have been stealing our data for like decades. They took all that and then they took people's private artwork. My artwork is probably somewhere in there that I've
Mm-hmm.
created because I've got a little bit of it online. They scraped all that stuff from publicly available sites, and then when they couldn't get it from publicly available stuff, they scanned it in. They took
Mm-hmm.
books that people had written, they ripped the pages out and put them into scanners and then scanned that in so that the AI could read it and train off of it. They did all the things that these companies rally against. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Disney's a perfect example. They have like 3 or 4 shows that have come out with AI openings, have some of their stuff that's been written, some of the other things that are going into it, like special effects and everything,
Mm-hmm.
are created off of AI. They didn't train those models. They like went to some place like OpenAI or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they got that. So that is theft by their definition, and it's okay for them, but not for the average person.
Yeah.
So, like, that is just a convoluted way of saying it's good enough for me, but not for thee.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in the end, these oligarchs and people that are running these things are going to find that average people are either going to become like these kind of like people that don't do anything and don't interact anything with the stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just kind of in this cyclical thing, or cyclical thing where a company is doing this
Yeah.
other thing, or they're in a place where the average person that does interact with them is doing it because they have to, not because they want to.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of getting to that like divide right now.
No, I think you're right. We're seeing a big rise in technologies that like sometimes don't even have screens anymore. It's the like, let me just get a video player that's like, I saw something there now that's very popular with the younger generations that's closer to like an iPod Nano, those little tiny things that you clip to your shirt.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Talking about the
because
Rabbit R1 that you can use as like an AI assistant.
no, I don't even think it was. Oh, maybe I don't even think it was AI. I think I'm just going a completely different direction. If I saw someone talking about their new little just like video only play, I think it'd like connect to Spotify or something like that. Like
Oh
could
yeah,
set up
you
a
have
thing.
like a little Spotify player that you could use to
Yeah, it's something
listen
like
to music.
that. You know, so it's like you don't have the screen, you don't even have the other stuff built into it, and we're seeing a big rise in like retro gaming. It's not that it would be what you and me would consider retro, but like older handhelds and stuff like that are
Mhm.
becoming popular again because they don't have so much built-in crap to them that people don't like. The big call for people want physical knobs and buttons on cars again
Yep.
instead of touchscreens, and I do think we are seeing certain areas of society kind of push back on this is all just becoming a bit too much.
Mhm.
There's the thing I want to do, and there's an amount of extra tacked on stuff I'm willing to tolerate. And we've gone a little bit over what I'm willing to tolerate in terms of now it feels like dealing with the tacked on stuff is more of a hassle than doing the thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And that's all driving prices up. Like all that cumulative problem right there is driving the prices up, as we talked before, because the shareholders and everything to these companies believe they'll make more profit because AI somehow is going to magically make it so that they don't have to pay for labor, or they don't have to pay for what, I don't know what, because the now the way that they're going is they've driven up the prices of the things that are used to make the AI so that it's super expensive.
Yeah.
So now your data center time.
You're just changing who you're paying.
Yeah.
And, I think people are taking leaps that they're not ready to take yet. I was listening to a great story about a AI run store in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Maybe it was San Diego. It's one of the two. And essentially, it's just like one of these little like pop up, like bodega is not the right word, but that type of store.
Pop-up shop kind of deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a permanent fixture. It's just like it's a little small variety shop is maybe what I'm getting at. And the stock is picked out by the AI agent, like researched the neighborhood to pick what was going to be in stock. It buys the stuff from the manufacturers. It went out and hired physical employees to come in and like do the stuff that it couldn't. It's got cameras that it can see. Those physical employees' job is to do what the AI tells it to do. And it really just made this kind of very funky store where it was like snacks, but also candles and like little knickknacks and stuff, just like anything it thought those demographics might buy. It had like its first kind of like official press release thing. Or no, I got that backwards. It doesn't sell candles. It does sell candles. Sorry, I'm trying to recall it as we go. But when it did its press thing, it was like talked about how great the tea was or something like that. And these tea are so amazing. It doesn't sell tea. And it figured that out and it corrected itself. I had to send an email like, oh, sorry, I don't know why I said that. I get nervous under pressure and like stuff like that. And so like this essentially pattern recognition model they're trying to get run a store. And obviously that's not going great, And it's just like, but why? I think specifically the people that were doing it were just doing it as an experiment. It was expected not to necessarily be successful. But it's such a thing that I think you could convince a business person to do right now who's not super savvy on how it works.
Yeah.
And like, I bet if that was a publicly traded company, its stock would have blown up, just like the shoe company who just like 8x its stock price by saying we're not shoes anymore. Now we're AI.
We're AI.
And have no product yet.
Yeah.
It's very .com-esque to the way that we're interacting with AI. And I think that's really concerning because I think the problem with the .com boom is we figured out websites. And websites kind of became as useful as they were going to get. And like everybody had a website and everyone was on board with websites. Like there were people that still wanted physical stores, but there weren't many people who were getting up in arms and saying, and websites shouldn't exist. Websites are too far of humanity, right? But that is where we are with AI, that like the people are not sold on it. It's feature-wise not really complete. There's still very quick advancements in it from one generation to the next. But people are already starting to do the really dumb .com stuff.
Yeah.
And because this stuff is so expensive and the return on that investment is really not coming back anywhere, what's going to happen with this? I think my biggest concern for AI outside of its like impact on humanity is this actually is promising technology in the right hands, but it's probably going to blow up and be hard to fund and no one's going to like it before it ever actually gets to be what it could be.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like if it was used for pattern recognition in medical applications to enhance doctors, not to replace them. Mm-hmm. If it was used to help with troubleshooting network outages that had very directed like problems for like critical infrastructures and networks, if it was used to analyze power grid issues and directed towards those sorts of things for pattern recognition, if it was used for, on and on and on, but all that's pattern recognition and analysis.
Yeah, exactly.
And not replacing the knowledge that people already have, because that's where AI really shines right now. Yeah. And it might be good as like a voice assistant enhancement or like a home automation enhancement in certain contexts, but like woe to you, the person that just says AI go out and do whatever.
Oh, yeah,
because I mean,
ultimately
like
fucked.
The researcher that did like the open claw thing and just had them like delete. They had to like unplug the computer because it was just deleting all of their emails. They like set it loose on their actual like mailbox. You
gotta be careful. Or what's the thing that Claude's had working on? They basically made a software tool that was supposed to be able to find vulnerabilities in software
and then exploit them so that they like in a sandbox.
It was all supposed to be in a secured sandbox, and it was supposed to just be like, hey, we're going to use this to basically do almost like really advanced pen testing. We're going to try and find ways and find exploits.
They just released that.
And, no, they haven't released it to the public, and that's the whole
you
drama.
can't get it as part of the public. They released it, and you have to become part of like this like special group of.
No,
people
they picked like 50 companies to help them test it and like their use cases on it. But that's all very, very locked down because it did something really scary. They said basically made a virtual user to be like the person asking you to do stuff to test while they were out, and like the lead engineer got an email from it. Letting it know, hey, I got out of the sandbox.
Yeah.
Because like the virtual user told it to, but the virtual user said, hey, can you find a way to get out of this sandbox? And it did.
Yeah.
And now, there's this tool that can find vulnerabilities in almost no time at all. And like, if that was publicly available, that's super scary. And like, or if it gets leaked somewhere. I've already heard some like high up engineers in our organization talking about hey, we're going to have to be ready and probably sometime the next year or so there to be like massive security vulnerabilities on everything, and so we're gonna have to update everything to new
all
versions
the time.
of stuff.
We just have to like constantly update to stay ahead, or just like keep it up the pace.
Yeah, or really just the first time that thing gets released, and like people are allowed to like know what their vulnerabilities are, because that's the other scariest thing. Like a tool like that can almost not be used truly ethically.
Yeah,
because when a vulnerability exists, there is kind of like a moralistic aspect. You need to notify users. Or like if a good company sits down and says, okay, I'm going to scan all of my stuff. Oh man, there's like these 8 vulnerabilities. All right, everybody, tell the users, let's get hot fixes going right now for everything. Well, that's cool, but if the tool's publicly available, some hacker's already done it and exploited you and you didn't know it.
Yeah.
Because they did it second 1 and you did it minute 5. Like what seems like just no amount of time, it would matter because they can just unleash this AI and say, hey, can you get in here? And, that's obviously very concerning. But, going back to acceptance, I mean, I had to sign all these forms for all of my doctors that do telehealth and things like that are basically like, hey, and this is like our special AI clause of like we essentially have like an AI agent that sits in the room and summarizes and helps us take notes, which I think is a very valid use for AI. But they were telling me that's like, yeah, a lot of people refuse to sign this. And so like even in a very not scary application, when it's like literally the meeting's being recorded anyway, the difference is, am I listening to it a second time to take notes, or am I going to let the AI take notes for me? Is making no decision. It has no impact on care. It's just being used as like a clerical,
right,
tool. People are just like, no, that's an AI thing. I don't want AI anywhere near me.
Yeah.
And for that adoption, I mean, we're already seeing economic models that I think mimic things that have crashed real hard. That's scary because again, at the end of the day, some people will definitely say, I prefer a physical store. Nobody was saying, and websites need to not exist.
Yeah.
Websites were a bane on humanity, a terrible idea, and the people that invested in these, websites need to go to jail.
Right.
That was not the sentiment, and we still saw massive economic impact. AI really does have, I think it's got a very narrow window, but it has to be so incredibly useful that it like turns people around very quickly.
Right.
Or like just AI truly is like the next big economic thing like the internet was.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
It'll still exist. It'll be integrated into products. People will use it and not know they're using it because like the technology is still good, but it's going to start advancing slower. It's never going to be able to have the same public image that it could if it could actually just become actually useful and not scary quickly. Because like truly, you don't see too many news, and as part of this is our news. We've talked about it before. News is very naturally negative now.
Or hides the truly negative stuff with other negative things that aren't as bad.
Yeah, but it's a lot of doom and gloom because like sadness makes you click on something, or anger makes you click on something more than happiness.
Right.
But you don't see too many headlines about here's this great thing AI did. There's a lot of stories and a lot of little meme images pop up on websites of factoids. Did you know this is how AI fucked you this week?
Yep.
So like they got to get back in public graces before the funding runs out.
I mean, that's absolutely true. But I kind of wouldn't mind it if it got out of the public graces. I'd like to see it go slower. I'd like to see it develop less. I'd like to see it because then it could be like really developed properly, like it was at the beginning. Because at the beginning, the engineers were being very responsible and stuff like that before they started feeding it all the data and just like training on
Yeah,
stuff that they were stealing.
my only concern is I don't think the cultural sentiment changes really that much. It sometimes gets reframed, but often when humanity has decided something is bad, it stays bad for a very long time, and often to the point that the same terminology can't even be used anymore. So like once people start like accepting of something, even things that are completely cultural, you have to say like, oh well, we're going to change the word for this thing. Where it's not X, it's Y now. And I wonder if that's ultimately what will happen to AI. Is like people will just say, hey, AI fucking sucks, and then 6 years from now, after some researchers have actually gotten something good going again, it's like, no, 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 this isn't AI. This is, they might even put intelligence in. I was going to say virtual intelligence. I don't even do that. It's more like, this is, technology assisted,
Yeah.
whatever, something like that. And just the whole concept of AI is going to be something that just isn't palatable to our culture. And we're going to have to find a way to rework the good parts of that technology in, which will leave this gap. Because I agree with you. I think it should be developed slower. I think we are doing it really unethically. But I think at the same time also, it's had this roller coaster where like 2020, 2021, everybody was on board with AI. Everybody loved it. Everyone was testing ChatGPT, and like everyone you knew was like, "Hey, here's this thing I did in ChatGPT, and it told me the news, and this is great." But nowadays, like, I know some people like that are not tech people who do use ChatGPT to talk to every day. They like it'll reformat their text for them and stuff like that. But then they're like, "But all this other stuff, fuck all that.
Yeah,
I hate it."
Yep.
And it's like, okay, we've burned through the goodwill of a new technology.
Yeah, it is only useful for this very specific narrow thing, and it's not. I'm not paying for that.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do that myself for the amount of money that you're asking for me to pay for it.
Yeah, so it's really. I know we're just rambling now at this point, but I do think, culturally that's my concern. Is I think it is ultimately, if you take out all the unethical shit people are doing with it, the technology itself is amazing and is a good advancement. We're doing things, unethical things, but we are doing things from a purely technological way. People did it was very bad.
Yes.
But nowadays that we've kind of figured out what we're okay with, factories are now a very integral part of our lives, but nobody hates factories. Nobody says, hey, like you might not like the pollution, there might be an aspect of it you don't enjoy, but no one's going to say, oh, hey, did you see that a factory is coming into town? They're going to build a processing plant for X. And people might say, oh, look, that's new jobs. Or, oh, maybe, we got to be careful with the pollution because there might be too much pollution locally. But not the same sort of thing where you're hearing someone says, hey, did you hear an AI data center got approved? We need to go do a drive-by on the counselors' homes who approved it.
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah, I know.
Right? It's a whole different level of negativity around AI, which is probably earned because of all the terrible shit they're doing with it.
Well, not just that, but like a factory moves into town. There were some points, especially like in the 80s and 70s, where there were stories. Public sentiment was not cool with the industrialization of every town.
Yeah.
And the death that it caused to like smaller places. I mean, we still have like farms that are being bought out by complexes and industrial like corporations that go in and will kind of make the farm into like this other thing than what it started out as, and that causes like problems with fallowness and all this other stuff. And because it's like pushing stuff, or it's like making stuff that's like very unhealthy because of the pesticides and everything that it's using, and it just doesn't care because it's looking for profit, right?
Yeah.
And there are people that are against that. I agree that it is not the same quick vehemency that like everyone has against the data center movement. Data center is going to cost the community more than it's going to get back, and those are the three big things that are there, because not only is it running up power and all this other stuff, their power consumption in that area is going to be given to the data center and taken away from the people. So they're already having experiments in places like this where they're saying you can't run your air conditioner in the summer, you can't run your heater in the winter because the data center in the area is pulling so much power during peak time.
But well, so
or
again,
it's driving up the prices for you to be able to do those things too. And that's why people are, like, in general, just so against this, like, move, because it's just such a quick, like, it affects your life so fast, just boom.
It does, but also you don't get anything out of it, and
Exactly.
you don't. And but this goes back to my point, though. It's like, yes, I mean, there's some use cases where, like, a factory is not going to benefit your community, but no one sits down and says factories as a technology
No, I agree
are
with
shitty
that.
and awful.
Absolutely.
Whereas with these data centers and with this AI stuff, it's like, yeah, not only is it going to negatively impact me, this technology shouldn't exist.
Yeah, it's
we
not
hate
good.
this.
We hate it.
You know, it's like you might as well be putting a puppy mill in. Like, you're doing things that we hate.
The closest that you could probably get to it is advertising, like advertising in everything, ad profiles and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
if
People just love
if
that
you could have an
stuff
ad
so
data center, it would be very similar to the same thing we're seeing with AI. Which, I mean, that's actually a really great analogy. You know, it is a technology that I mean, I guess technically ads make money, so like there is an economic benefit, but the people really aren't on board for them. But there's like people who say, hey, well, this one type of ad is okay. Like, I don't mind a little 30-second before my video as long as it's nowhere else. You know, so it is maybe a similar way of some people are saying, like, well, I'll do a chat GPT, but I'm not going to do this. You know, I'm getting diagnosed based off of, you know, my health chart being read into a system type of deal. You know, so
well, I'll counter that with, there are very successful open source projects that are out there, while not adopted by completely the mainstream. A lot of people are adopting them because advertisement networks are so pervasive and invasive into people's lives, where it blocks those things at the DNS level at someone's home to at least give them a safe bastion away from being analyzed and advertised.
Oh, definitely. But, you know, I guess what I was more getting at is, you know, it is common to find someone who says, hey, I think advertisement has worth. I hate the way we're doing it. I don't like pop-up ads. I don't like these ads every 30 seconds. But I understand that a billboard generates more sales.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. And that's kind of what I'm seeing with AI, where people are like, there's one or two particular use cases of AI that I'm comfortable with. Everything else I think kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the same time, there are not ad data centers that are driving up your electricity bill or using up your water or making your RAM expensive.
Yeah.
So, like, it's even less favorable than that. And, like, again, public sentiment, nobody is going to stand up on a soapbox and say, I love advertisements.
Right.
People will agree that maybe there are some use cases it's beneficial. Nobody likes advertisements. And if you said, and my platform is valuable because it runs on advertisements, people will hate you.
So, I mean, Facebook, that's essentially Meta and Facebook.
But that's what they are, but they don't advertise it that way. They don't stand up and say, hey, what do you get from Facebook? Every single ad. And as new types of ads come out, you're going to get those too. Like, that's what they do to make money. But they tell users, it's like, no, we're connecting people and their families and communities, and you can use the dating app now, and you can sell stuff on the marketplace. Like, that's not the selling point. But where we are with AI now that is the selling point. People will say, hey, I'm doing the thing with AI. And you're four times more valuable now. Because AI is the product that they're trying to sell, and people just don't want that product.
We should just
the public sentiment's gone.
Make a podcast that's us, but it's just marketed as AI.
Yes,
it's an AI podcast that's just
we clip our noses and we're like, and this is Ricky, you know, and they'll never know.
They'll never. We'll just get investors out,
at the end of these podcasts. We're not going to get comments that are like, this is the best conversational AI I've ever seen.
Yeah,
but then also a lot of comments are like, at 38 seconds, no human would say that.
Yeah,
exactly. It'd be so self-conscious, like, well, you don't talk like a human.
What do you mean? And it's the clothespin on the nose, man.
I thought that joke was good.
Anyways, we're not going to revisit this as a warmed up beverage because it was already warm.
Yeah.
But I don't really really have anything else to say about that. And we're late for D&D, so we should probably go wrap up and go play our D&D game.
Yeah, we enjoy talking too much.
Yeah.
We need to stop planning for short episodes. It never works.
It never works out. These were supposed to be 15 minutes each, and they ended up being 30 and 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Season 9, Episode 2 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. It's slated to come out on April 27th, 2026. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.